Recently, we traveled to the Republic of Singapore, a small, culturally diverse, and highly successful city-state. In less than 50 years, Singapore has transformed itself into one of the most dynamic and productive countries in Southeast Asia. With limited resources but an openness to innovation, the government has helped make Singapore an ideal place to live, work, and play. This is America visits the Republic of Singapore. This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. The American Federation of Teachers, a union of professionals. The Singapore Tourism Board, there's something for everyone. Singapore Airlines, a great way to fly. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotendaro Family Trust. This is America visited Singapore 11 years ago. While the country was successful back then, it's a world-class city-state on every level today. At Astana, the historic and beautiful government headquarters, I had the opportunity to sit and talk with Singapore's Prime Minister.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your hospitality and for the visit.
Happy to be here.
Tell me three things that Americans should know about Singapore.
First, it's a very small city in the middle of a very vibrant region in Southeast Asia. Secondly, we are completely connected to the world, China, India, America, the developed countries. Thirdly, we are working hard to stay abreast of the changes around us and to improve the lives of our people.
We were here 11 years ago. It's turned out to be such a dynamic city-state.
Well, the whole region has moved, and we have tried to keep abreast of the developments around us. The momentum is there because there's a dynamism from China and India opening up. Southeast Asia is not doing too badly, and in Singapore we have tried hard to work together cohesively and to do things which will put us in good stead for the long term, investing in our people, investing in our city, in our infrastructure, educating our people, bringing in projects, bringing in jobs, so that we don't just have a high GDP, but a good quality of life.
You mentioned the people here, and Ambassador Chan back in Washington is fond of saying that the people here are the natural resource. Do you agree?
It's the only thing we have.
Yeah.
Location is important to us, and that's an advantage for Singapore in the middle of the Southeast Asian region. Yeah. But really we depend on our people to create the wealth and to create our own future. We have no gold, no oil, no timber, no hydroelectric power.
Is that the reason, Mr. Prime Minister, that there's a heavy investment in education here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we see that as our future, and our people see that too. And every parent believes that.
Yeah. Do the kids have enough time to play as well?
Not as much as they would like to, and not as much as we would like them to, but we try to keep a balance, because we don't think that the way to grow up is really to spend a lot of time, all your time mugging textbooks.
Yeah.
You have to interact, you have to play games, you have to get fit, get knocked about, socialize, and learn about the world, and take some knocks. And that's what we are trying to do. But parents want their children to do well in school, so whatever we do in school, the parents tend to add on a little bit more.
I think that people back in the States don't know about the wonderful diversity of this culture, the different groups that are here, ethnic groups, religious groups, and how well everybody seems to get along.
Well, we were created like this. We are 3/4 Chinese, maybe 15% Malays who are Muslims, maybe 8-9% Indians, and a smattering of other groups. And all the major religions in the world are present in Singapore. Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, Hindus, different Christian groups. And we have to get along together, cheek by jowl, living close together, integrated, working together, serving in the army together. And it's the only way we can survive, because if we quarrel with one another or fight, I think our society would fracture, and that would be permanent.
The relationship, I know, between Singapore and the United States is very important to both countries. Huh? Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's one of our most important external relationships. America is the major power in the world and a very important influence all over the Asia Pacific. In terms of the economy, our trade with them is a big part of our international trade. Our exports to America are crucial. We have an FTA with America, a free trade agreement. In terms of security, America is a major player assuring the security of the Asia Pacific region, and we have a very good security partnership with the United States. And I think in terms of soft power, America has a big influence all over the world. Many people from Singapore study in America, send their children there. And well, when you watch movies, they're from Hollywood. When you read magazines, many of them are American. It's a major part of our world. Of course, the other powers in Asia are also developing. China is playing an increasingly important role. India growing too. And over time, the balance will shift. But I think America would be important to us for a very long time.
In Singapore, I had the opportunity to visit with U.S. Ambassador David Adelman.
How do you account for its success? It is a very, very successful place.
Well, undoubtedly. It stands out in this region, especially, as a place that has created tremendous wealth and a very high standard of living for her people. The government of Singapore deserves a lot of credit, but I will say this. In addition to Singapore's people, Singapore does have some things going for it that come naturally. For example, probably the best location on the whole planet. About 50% of the goods that are shipped over the seas pass right through here, through the Straits of Malacca and the Straits of Singapore, which accounts for what, depending on how you measure it, is either the first or the second busiest container port in the world. So the good location is, in a sense, a natural resource enjoyed in connection with a natural deepwater harbor. But I think the key to Singapore's success has been not to squander that great location and these important straits. And they've done that by getting the most out of their people. There's an emphasis on education here, similar to what you see throughout East Asia, as well as, frankly, in the United States. And it's a highly productive workforce. In Singapore, business is king. And I guess I would start by saying Singapore is the most trade-dependent country on the planet, which I think makes it especially important to the United States in this new economy. Second, I think, and this might surprise many Americans, in Singapore the first language is English. As a former British colony, all Singaporeans speak English, schools are taught in English, and of course, as is the case in most of the world, business is conducted in English. And again, this may come as some surprise, Singapore is a very good friend to the United States. Oftentimes, when I mention where I'm serving to Americans back home, it seems like this exotic, faraway place, and I suppose that's true, but it is a place that since its very beginning, since its founding as an independent country, has been a close, strong friend of the United States.
What are the mutual interests between the two countries and, say, the mutual concerns?
Sure. Well, You know, I guess to start with, when we say mutual interests, I have to say that the relationship between the United States and Singapore is truly multifaceted. But at the very foundation of the relationship is our interest in security, in peace around the world, and especially peace and stability in Southeast Asia. And that has different parts to it, including freedom of navigation. These are very important global commons for international trade, and the movement of cargo from the United States to the United States and in and around Asia is especially important to both Singapore and to the United States. So the other side of that coin, I guess, may go to some of the mutual or shared concerns. We all have concerns with security, counterterrorism, non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and other dangerous weapons, counter-piracy. Modern-day piracy is an increasing problem in this part of the world. All of those issues are mutual concerns between our two countries.
We were at the National Museum a little while ago and looking at the great history, a short history, 1965, and all of a sudden, independence. Can you think back or just at least draw for us those early days and what some of the challenges were to create this city-state country?
The challenges were really existential. They had to do with whether we could survive at all. We became independent really not by choice, it was forced upon us. We were expelled from the Federation of Malaysia. And the issues were fundamental. First, to make a living and get an economy going, because we had planned on being part of a bigger economy in Malaysia, and suddenly we were on our own. Second, to provide for our security and defense, because we really had no armed forces of our own when we came out. 2 infantry battalions, and most of the troops were not even Singaporeans. And thirdly, to create a nation, a sense of identity, of pride, of togetherness and unity, so that we can feel as one people and we can do things together.
Can you plan a country? Can you plan a country?
You can make sensible moves, and then you see how those turn out, and then you make further moves. And fortunately for us, the moves we made worked out well, and the conditions were favorable. And so we were able progressively to take step by step, make progress and get here from where we were. But we didn't know when we started off that nearly 50 years later, we would have today Singapore with a Marina Bay, with IRs, integrated resorts, with a skyline, and with a standard of living for our people.
Does the fact that it's a small country, 5 million plus people, is that about right?
5 million and a bit, yes.
Yeah. Does it make it easier to innovate, to make changes, to try things?
Well, it has, because with a small country, firstly, the sense of being in the same boat is stronger. I mean, wherever you may be living in Singapore, basically you see the world in the same way. Secondly, the world is right at your doorstep, so you can't feel that, well, I'm living my own life and the rest, the external environment will not impinge on me. Thirdly, if you can get everybody together on the same page and persuade them, then when you move, it's one level of government. You don't have states, you don't have cities, it's just one national government. So that's one of the advantages of being small. The last 5 years have been tumultuous ones. We've had a global economic crisis which has affected the whole world and us too. Conditions have changed fast. We've had high growth some years, negative growth other years. We've had significant inflows of foreign workers, of immigrants. So it's been a difficult time for our people. It's been a difficult time also for the government making policies because conditions change fast. So when you don't anticipate it quite right, you'll find for example, we don't have enough, we haven't built enough houses for our people, so there's a queue for public housing. Our public transport is more congested than we would like it to be because the population has grown faster than we expected. And people feel it in their lives, and I think that's something which we have to recognize and admit. We did not have perfect foresight.
World-class city, no doubt about it. Dynamic. You just look at the skyline and you just know things are happening here. Yet some people abroad would say it's too perfect. It's maybe too strict. How do you respond to that for people who have never been here before and just have an image?
Well, there are some constraints which you have to accept when you are 5 million people in one little city, which is also a country. And you have no place to go on weekends to decompress, upstate New York or some other place like that. This is where we live, and so we have to make some accommodations so that life is tolerable for all of us. But we are loosening up, we are opening up. I think there's a buzz in the city, whether it's the resorts, integrated resorts with the casinos and the entertainment, whether it's the art scene, whether it's the food scene, or whether it's people doing their own thing in voluntary organizations, NGOs, pursuing their interests, protecting the environment, or the arts, or whatever. I think it's opening up. We are part of the world. We speak English. We're all connected to the internet. There are 2 million something Facebook accounts in Singapore. Ooh. So it is not possible for us to be cut off from the world or to be totally different from how the rest of the world is.
How about the whole idea of myths? What would you think are the myths that you'd like to kind of get out of people's minds about Singapore?
Well, if I say them, I reinforce them. I think it's a myth that we have solved all our problems. I mean, there are always new issues which we have to tackle and deal with. When people say you are monolithic and completely controlled, that's totally untrue. People come here and they find they don't see any policemen on any street corners, and they're amazed about that. I think it's a myth that Singaporeans don't know how to enjoy themselves and let their hair down. We are not that very different from people in other countries in the world.
Would you say that Singapore is a good place to work and do business?
I would say so. Many companies have found it so. The staffs who have been deployed here and live and work here, and the families are very happy to be here, and often they write to us and tell us how much they've enjoyed their stay in Singapore.
I talked with Michael Zink of Citibank.
Singapore is not an emerging market. Singapore is a financial services center as sophisticated, hand on heart I say to you, as sophisticated as New York or London. It has the regulatory framework, the collection of talent, the processing capabilities, the platforms, all the infrastructure, all the software to match toe-to-toe the best financial centers in the world. That may come as a surprise to people at home. That doesn't mean that the financial centers in New York and London are about to disappear. That's just not true. It just means one more competitor has risen up. And that's part of the story of Asia. Fast economic growth that has translated into better quality of life for hundreds of millions of people, sustainable economic growth, and a sophistication that's, again, not fully visible to everybody in what we used to describe as the West.
Singapore, a must for city?
Critical. Our single largest operation, Asia Pacific, we have 9,700 employees here.
Singapore?
In Singapore. We're the largest employer in financial services in Singapore. To give you a sense, we employ more people here even than the big domestic banks, because we have a collection of businesses. Big businesses domestically, corporate banking, private banking. Our consumer bank has 1 million credit cards outstanding in Singapore, and there's only 4.8 million people.
Yes.
and on top of these domestic businesses, we have regional businesses that serve all of Asia. Our global markets, which would be foreign exchange, interest rate derivatives, commodity businesses based here in Singapore. A lot of our transaction services for our multinational clients that pay and collect around the region based here in Singapore. Private banking for Asia, and this is the part of the world generating more millionaires than anywhere else today, based in Singapore. And finally, we also have one of our most important centers of excellence for our technology and our processing. And as you I'm sure understand today, the world is digitizing, and our business is digitizing more quickly than most. So the ability to process transactions, process and protect data is critical to success in financial services. So our main data center for Asia Pacific and our biggest processing center serving about 45 countries. So it's more than just Asia here in Singapore.
How about a good place to live?
I would say that also. It's not like living in the, how shall we, in a rural part of America or Britain where you've got green fields and endless expanses. It's an urban environment, but it's a good urban environment with greenery, with orderly, with streets where traffic flows, where you can enjoy yourself even in the midst of many other people.
I asked a couple of our guests about living in Singapore.
Of course, I think Singapore is a good place to live. I think we work very hard in making it very livable. It's not all about just economic growth. I think the quality of life is very important, and we have tried very hard to ensure that we address this part of it, about quality of life. So Singapore is actually very safe, all right? Crime rates are low. It has a great health system, good education, and at the same time, we need to provide for the lifestyle needs of different types of people. It is highly cosmopolitan. So we have a multiracial mix, and everybody has different needs. So what we do is provide a whole different offerings for recreation and leisure. So I think it's highly livable.
I think Singapore is a great place to live. I think it's become a global city. The government is positioning itself as a global city. They are starting to build art here, culture, attract some of the best performers in the world to Singapore, some of the best bands, you know. And I think that's attracting a lot of people in the region to Singapore. Infrastructure is fantastic. It's easy to move around in Singapore. It's a very safe city. It's a very clean city. You've got lots of restaurants over here. So I think if you ask any expatriate here, they will tell you Singapore is an extremely pleasant city to live in. And I think the survey is done. And these surveys have also come through very positively for Singapore. And most expats feel that Singapore is an excellent place to live in.
How do you protect your own culture here, at the same time be open, as younger people certainly are, to the influence coming from America? You know, a lot of countries...
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge for many countries, especially for us because we're English speaking. But one of the ways we do it is to make sure that all our children learn their mother tongue in school. So those of us who are ethnic Chinese like me, our kids will have to learn Mandarin in school as a subject. So to the Malay children, so to the Indian children. The language of instruction is English, the working language is English, but you must learn your mother tongue. So that gives you a sense of roots, of culture, of your heritage, of ballast.
As we're coming to the end of our conversation, let me ask you a kind of a very broad question. You've referenced India, you've referenced China, other countries in the area. When you look at the world right now, I mean, you're a very important leader. When you look at the world and the turmoil of this past year, what do you see? What do you feel?
Well, I think in the short, medium term, we have concerns because you see so many problems. In Europe, of course, with Greece and the southern European countries. In America, with your economy still really not picking up, as well as your fiscal problems, which are deep and structural, and the political gridlock, which is making it difficult for you to solve the problems. And so many other issues which are uncertain, security, other matters. But if you look at Asia, I think we have reason to be confident because China is growing and will continue to grow and transform itself for quite a long time to come. I think India will be also growing, although it's some years behind China in the progress it has made. And the countries throughout Asia are transforming themselves and part of this Asian growth story. So there are positives and there are minuses, but if you take it on a long-term basis, I think the preconditions look good for us to continue to prosper, provided we continue to adapt ourselves to a changing world.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Special thanks to the staff of the Fullerton Hotel in Singapore and the Embassy of Singapore in Washington. For information about my new book, The Chance of a Lifetime, and online video for all This Is America programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net. This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. The American Federation of Teachers, a union of professionals. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotendaro Family Trust.